For the Better Breakfast Pastry project, our team decided to do bagels. We chose bagels because they are a universal bread that is eaten around the world for breakfast, without people knowing the nutritional impact. The purpose of our experiment is to take the common bagel and develop a more healthful option. Foods are often filled with salt and sugar that the consumer is often unaware or unbothered by. While bagel dough is lean and contains low or no added sugar, bagels are often high in salt. We began tackling our project by choosing 2 menus of change principles to guide our work. We incorporated produce and full wheat berries into our bagels to bring new nutritional benefits. Our final result was a bagel with lots of blueberries and natural sweetness from incorporating whole wheat flour and wheat berries. In the future, we will take this research into our careers as bakers and use our newfound knowledge of healthful baking principles directly into our work. Our research focused on the nutritional impact of the ingredients we chose to use and how we could make our recipe for bagels more healthful. Our main issue with our dough was our sodium content. The sodium content in our control bagel was 450 milligrams per serving. The guidelines given to us was a final product below 320 milligrams of sodium per serving. We used ESHA software to help guide our nutritional analysis of our bagels. Another issue we decided to research was the health benefits of incorporating whole wheat flour into our dough. Whole wheat flour has higher fiber content and helps individuals keep a lower blood sugar level, as well as incorporating naturally occurring vitamins into the dough. We also researched the impact of adding blueberries to the dough, and while blueberries have sugar, they are high in antioxidants and add great natural sweetness. As mentioned before, the menus of change principles we chose to apply to our experiment are think produce first and make whole intact grains the new norm. The produce first movement entails bringing focus to produce and incorporating more fruits and vegetables into your diet. The Menus of Change website says the whole wheat movement is about making slow metabolizing whole and intact grains such as 100% whole grain bread, brown rice, and whole grain/higher protein pasta the new norm. The principle is trying to make people use white flour and other refined carbohydrates sparingly, as their impacts on health are similar to those of sugar and saturated fats. To narrow our project, we developed the problem statement: how can we incorporate produce and wheat berries into bagels to make a bagel with lower sodium while increasing focus on produce utilization? This problem statement detailed what our goal was and asked how we can achieve it. To respond to our problem statement, our group hypothesized that by incorporating dried blueberries and soaked wheat berries into our bagel dough and reducing the salt, we will create a bagel with lower sodium content while utilizing produce items.
For our independent variable, we lowered the amount of salt in the bagel dough and we added dried blueberries. This supports our hypothesis by incorporating more produce according to the menus of change principle, and by reducing the sodium content to fit the guideline of the maximum content of 320 grams. For our dependent variable is how the flavor of the bagel changed with the lower amount of salt and the addition of the dried blueberries. Our control had 450 milligrams of sodium, and we needed to change it to be under 320 milligrams in order to fit their criteria. We put the recipe through ESHA to see how much we had to reduce the salt, and we found that we needed to reduce the salt from 21 grams to 15 grams. We collected qualitative data through surveys given to the students in the teaching kitchen. We asked them to rank the appearance of the Better Breakfast Bagel from 1 to 5, 1 being unattractive, 5 being most attractive. To rank the texture of the bagels 1 to 5, 5 being the best and 1 being the worst. And to rank the flavors of the bagels, 1 being bland, 5 being delicious. Our constant variables consisted of keeping the oven temperature at 425 degrees for all of the experiments, as well as keeping the boil time to 30 seconds with each batch as well. We also made sure to scale all the bagels to 100 grams before shaking. As for the materials we used a 20-quart Hobart mixer with a dough hook because when we tried to mix it in a KitchenAid, the motor would stop because the dough was really bucky. So we also used a refrigerator to retard the dough overnight for all of our experiments. We used a kitchen scale to weigh the dough when we divided it, and dried blueberries and wheat berries are included in materials because they're not common ingredients in most bake shops. The recipe on the left is our control recipe, and the recipe on the right is our healthful recipe. As you can see, we bolded the changes that we made, like reducing the salt from 21 to 15 grams, and we also made half of the total flour weight to be whole grain flour. We also added brown sugar and more malt powder to help with the coloration of the bagels, because the first recipes we tried, they were really pale, so Chef Brown suggested to add more sugar to the recipe to increase the browning of the crust. We added Sonoran wheat berries and dried blueberries to fulfill our menus of change requirement. As for the mixing method, we first combined all the ingredients for the sponge together and mixed the dough for 4 minutes. The dough then fermented for 1.5 hours. After the sponge fermented, we added the water, yeast, malt powder, sugar, and flours on top of the sponge and mixed it for 4 minutes on speed 1 of the Hobart mixer. And then we added the salt and mixed for 3.5 minutes on speed 2. We stopped the mixer 2 minutes in and added the wheat berries. And then once the dough was done mixing, we kneaded the blueberries in by hand so that the dough didn't get stained.
For our results, first is the nutritional outcome. On the left, we have our control nutrition facts, and on the right, we have our healthful nutrition facts. The important factors to note here are the decrease in sodium from 450 milligrams to 310 milligrams. Next up is all the bagels we tested. We have our control, we have our 100% whole wheat flour, our half and half bagel mixture, which was half whole wheat flour and half high gluten flour, and then we had a control with the inclusions of our blueberries and our wheat berries. We ended up picking the half and half bagel mixture, half whole wheat flour, half high gluten flour, and then adding in our blueberries and our wheat berries to introduce flavor and other nutrients. Next is our survey results. Our survey results were better than expected. When asked to rate the appearance, people saw no issues with the change in colors between a normal bagel versus our healthful bagel. Next, we asked them to rate the texture. No one disliked the texture. Everyone rated the texture of a 4 to 5 on the most satisfactory, even though we had the addition of the wheat berries and the blueberries, which is added a different note of texture as compared to just a plain bagel. And lastly, we asked them to rate the flavor. Everyone, again, enjoyed the flavor of the bagel. Everyone thought it was delicious and did not notice the decrease in salt because of the addition of the blueberries, giving extra flavor where needed. In terms of looking to produce a low-sodium bagel with added produce, our data shows that our hypothesis was supported. We were able to blend flours, add in blueberries and wheat berries to increase nutrient levels and flavor to draw attention away from decreasing the sodium levels, and everyone that we surveyed enjoyed the flavor, texture, and found the appearance to be desirable. So all in all, our healthful bagel was a success. After finishing our experiment, there are several things we could change if we were to do this again. One variable our group discussed is trying different whole grains in the dough, such as oatmeal or other wheat berries. We could also do trials using different oven temperatures and see how they impact the browning of the bagels. We decided to let the bagels sit in the fridge overnight directly after shaping, but it would be impactful to see how different rest, proofing, or retardation times would affect the texture and appearance of the final product. As we stated before, we boiled the bagels in water for 30 seconds, and another variable we could test is different boiling times and how that would affect the bagel as well. One issue we had early in our experiment was very light coloring on the bagels after baking, and if we had more time, we could look into egg washing the bagels to achieve the same golden color without adding additional sugar or additional bake time.
As for the applications, some things that we thought about while conducting this experiment include finding a way to incorporate the blueberries better, because as we were dividing the dough, we saw that some bagels had like a ton of blueberries in them, where some didn't have any blueberries in it at all. Some other questions that we have included is to why the bagels have to rest overnight, and why do we boil them before we bake them. Another interesting thought I had is how could we fill the bagels with cream cheese before we bake them. These are the sources that we used, and I hope you enjoyed our presentation.